Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video we're going to take a look at the Google Pixel 8 Pro, Google's latest flagship smartphone, available at Best Buy now, and coming with a lot of interesting new features. The Pixel 8 Pro is Google's bona fide flagship phone, and this time around it has enough differences from the regular Pixel 8 to stand out on its own even more. It's not just the design. The design for me, I think, is, yes, it's going to be familiar, especially if you're familiar with Pixel phones, but one thing I really like that Google did here was it went with a matte back finish that just looks elegant, but also feels that way too. Holding this phone, normally, like, I would feel like I would have a number of fingerprints, blemishes, smudges, things like that. This phone seems to avoid that, especially if you have the porcelain white model like I do. There's also the Bay Blue and Obsidian Black, which again, all look very nice. But I really took to this model largely because I just felt that it looked so nice and it handled well because of that porcelain finish. I also was a big fan of the flat display. Gone are the curved edges. We don't know if that's forever, but hopefully it is. That Google used to go with, because now they've gone with a flatter display, which for me works for a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, one is it's much easier to put a screen protector on this phone. Also, it's a lot easier to hold and handle when you're taking photos, which I do all the time with a phone like this. And so it simplifies things like that. There's a certain thing about handling this device, even if you include the rounded corners, which are more rounded than previous Pixel phones. There's just handling this phone is a lot easier, and it's one thing that I appreciated that Google did here from a design perspective. But there are other things that it changed as well that make a really nice difference when it comes to usability day to day. Screen brightness, for example. This screen is much brighter than the Pixel 7 Pro screen is, to the point where even if you're in bright sunlight, you might have to deal with some glare, but you're going to be able to see what you want to see on the screen, which I felt was more problematic with previous models. So that's already one thing that's a win in my book as far as this phone goes. The specs are also largely the same as far as storage, RAM, things like that, but of course you get Google's Tensor G3 chipset. This phone, though, I have to stress, this phone is not really about raw power. That's not the focus here. So if you were to do benchmarks, things like that, I'm sure that this phone would actually probably lose most of those, if not all of those races. But when it comes to efficiency, and when it comes to those efficiencies as they relate to the features that are enabled here, that's where the conversation gets a little more interesting. So Google, of course, focuses a lot on AI with some of its more recent products, and this is no exception. The AI stuff already existed to some degree with the previous model. So if you use things like Call Screen, Direct My Call, Hold For Me, or Magic Eraser, of course, on the photography side, you have an idea kind of where they're going with the AI stuff, and they've added to it here. All those features still exist. So all the ones I mentioned, they're still here. But there are more. So a couple, one is in beta, one I didn't even get to use at all. So like Magic Editor, for example, was one that I tried out. This is interesting. So this is using generative AI to either stylize a photo. So take a photo and stylize it in some very unique and artistic ways, or you can choose something. You can choose an element in the photo to remove it, to just change that. So for example, if you want just to pick the sky in a photo and change that up, you would be able to do it. I mentioned though, and I have to stress, as of this review, that feature is in beta. So it does wonky things. It doesn't necessarily give you good options, even when you, for example, like it may do a good job selecting the sky for you to edit, but then the different skies it gives you to sort of plot in there are not very good, or they're just not at all contextual with the scene. One I didn't get to try it was Video Boost. So this is where you can shoot video. It will then, the way it's supposed to work when it's ready is that you will then upload the video to a cloud-based service that Google will run, and will then sort of just change the lighting and everything in the video. So if you shot like a video that was a little too dark, it will then render that video for you in the cloud, give it back to you with better lighting, better color, things like that. This is what Google is saying. I've not seen it really in action, so I don't know how good the results are going to be, but it is an interesting feature nonetheless. One that I did get to try that I thought was very cool was Audio Magic Eraser. So Magic Eraser, but this time for audio. Very cool. The premise is really, I think is really useful, because some videos, of course, could be problematic based on certain sounds that are in there. So I tried this out with a couple of videos, and I should stress that this is also something you can try out with any video that you have in your Google Photos library. It doesn't have to be something you shot with this phone, which is very, very cool. It's kind of like Magic Eraser with photos that way. Anyway, the point is that you can, it will analyze the video and then highlight certain sounds that it notices. So it could be wind, noise, talking, crowd, sort of crowd chatter, nature sounds, things like that. And then you can select one and use the slider to determine how much of that you want to change, right? Do you want to deafen more of the nature sounds? Do you want to sort of reduce some of that crowd chatter? It's very, very cool. It's early days, so there are some kinks as well. Like, for example, when you do reduce any of those things, let's say it's a video where you're talking, it will change also the way your voice sounds. It gives it a bit more of a mechanical kind of tone, which I didn't personally like, and I feel like Google is probably gonna have to fix that with a software update, but it's a very good start so far. Of course, it wouldn't be a Pixel phone if we weren't talking photography, and the Pixel 8 Pro does not disappoint. And it doesn't really matter what level of photographer you are. So if you're a seasoned shooter like me, or if you're more of a novice, you've picked up a Pixel for the first time ever, I can guarantee you will get excellent results as long as you learn some of the tools and the features that are in the phone. Key to those, of course, for those who are seasoned or those who really want to have some extra control over the images, are the Pro controls. These are exclusive to the Pro, by the way. The regular Pixel 8 does not have these, at least not yet. So even though that runs on the same chipset, it technically should be capable, but right now it's still just on the 8 Pro as of this review. Anyway, point is that you have manual controls where you can change the shutter speed, ISO, white balance, and also even focus. So if you want to focus manually, you can now do that on this phone, which is very, very cool, something you couldn't do before. But even changing shutter speed and ISO is a big, big deal, because it just now allows you to compose the shot the way you want, as opposed to relying completely on Google's computational software to do it. You can still do that, by the way. If you shoot with all the other modes, you still have Google software doing its magic, and producing images that are very, very impressive in a lot of different conditions. I liked what I shot with, or at least I liked what I saw, and yeah, I have to say that this has got to be one of the best cameras you can get on a phone right now. One interesting feature also that I have to point out, because it's also unique to all phones, is a thermometer. Yeah, so Google put in an actual thermometer sensor. So there's a sensor on here in the back where the camera is, and you point it at an object, you use the thermometer app, and it will measure the temperature of that object. It's cool to see it in practice. I've tried it out just to kind of see what happens if it is, and it's hard to gauge accuracy unless you have something to also use to gauge temperature, but it's not too bad. The problem is, I think it's still, its usefulness is still up for debate, because I don't know, maybe do you do this with a cup of coffee to see if it's too hot, or if something is too warm or I don't know, or too cold? I'm not sure. I haven't used it enough to find use cases that I think are super compelling. And unfortunately, right now, it's only objects. You can't point this at a person and see what their body temperature is, right? Google says that's coming. That is something that they have filed with the FDA in the US, and I assume they've probably done the same with Health Canada. But until that is approved, we will not have a feature where you can just point this at a person and get their temperature. But that would be super cool when that happens. I'm going to address just general usage. So the phone, for the most part, is going to be perfectly fine for anything you want to do. Mixed usage, again, whether it's browsing, messaging, just streaming, whatever it is that you do, I saw no real problem here doing it with this phone. Gaming is pretty good too, although I would say that it's not going to be as robust, perhaps, as like a Galaxy S23 Ultra, for example, which really was built for gaming, with gaming in mind as well. So while you can play games on Xbox Game Pass or just games that you download on Android, I think you're going to find that the phone will heat up a little bit. Nothing too bad, nothing too dangerous or anything like that, but it just, the phone's got to push more. Like the Tensor G3 has to push a little harder in order to play the games. Then there's battery life. which is always something that comes up with any Pixel phone because it's been so hit and miss over the years. This is more of a hit, in my opinion. I was able to go through a full day without any problem. If you're on moderate usage, I think you'll get to bedtime without any issue, and probably even the next day. For heavy usage, don't be surprised if you just gotta sort of lay it down, maybe on a wireless charger or something at the end of the night, or overnight while you're sleeping, and then you're good to go for the next day. But the main thing, I think the main takeaway here is that you're not gonna get some weird battery drainage that has been a bit of a bugaboo with Pixel phones in the past. They've gotten better over the years, but this is, to me, this is a very good all-around performance when it comes to battery life, and it charges relatively quickly too. Won't come with a charger in the box, but I would recommend if you use something like 25 watts or higher, you'll be able to charge this very, very quickly. And that's my review of the Google Pixel 8 Pro. You can find out more about it by just clicking the link below here. For the Best Buy blog, I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.